Hi, Senators. Alana Shore with Politico.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about the Flint package that Senator Murkowski and Senator Cornyn, you both addressed it on stage. But, you know, we're Politico, so we follow the twists of this. And it appears that there may be more than one objection, or at least desire to slow down the process on the Republican side. Senator Lee has said he's looking at it. Is he the only one you're still talking to at this point, or are there others?
Well, I don't know that it's accurate to say slow down the process. I think what is accurate is members want an opportunity to view not only the Flint piece, but the proposal as we have laid it down for colleagues is one that is not only the base bill, but it is also a series of over 30 different amendments that we're prepared to take by voice. But even though that consent has been worked out between myself and the ranking member and our leaderships, it still needs to be reviewed by colleagues. So they're doing that. They're also looking at the Flint piece, and that process is underway. Of course, I would like to speed it up as much as possible, but I think it certainly is appropriate that colleagues have that opportunity to review fully what's in front of them and then agree to a path forward.
I would say Senator McConnell is fully on board and supporting Senator Murkowski in our effort to move this legislation through. And Senator Murkowski has done really incredible work, very patient, much more patient than I would be under the circumstances, trying to find a way to build consensus. The recognition also is that the state of Michigan is taking steps. They're not waiting on the federal government. They've actually taken some very substantial steps to deal with the issue themselves, and we're trying to also ascertain what's the appropriate federal role relative to what the state and local ratepayers are doing for a problem that could manifest itself nationally because of the aging water infrastructure.
Next question.
Thank you. Sonal Patel from Power Magazine. Over the past 8 years, the power sector has been grappling with a barrage of new environmental rules. The carbon rules, MATS, ozone, cross-state air pollution rule, coal ash rules, limitation guidelines, effluent limitation guidelines, and the cooling water intake rule. So the EPA has said that statutes and court decisions obligated to act. How do you suggest the EPA meets its obligations differently? And the second part is, how do you think it would be different for a Republican administration?
I think the first thing is that the EPA needs to stay within bounds of its jurisdiction. And you've rattled off a whole host of different regulations out there, but we just came from a discussion earlier where a Clean Power Plan was brought up. The courts were pretty clear in saying, you know, hold back on this. There's an overreach there, and it's not just on Clean Power Plan. We saw it with Waters of the United States. We've seen it with other regulations. So, you know, my first advice to EPA in terms of what you should be doing, stick within your jurisdiction. And hopefully with a Republican administration, the agencies would keep within bounds.
I'm Hai Gugaradze of Argus Media. We had FERC Chairman Norman Bay speak here today, and it reminded me the commission is down to 4 members, and when Tony Clark leaves, we'll be down to 3 members representing the president's party. Is that a concern, and when do you think the commission will get to the full speed?
Well, I am concerned. The FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, is very important in its role. Used to be nobody really followed much about what the FERC did. They didn't really care. They didn't know much about it. And now it is that agency that everyone's talking about. And it is important that we have a full complement because the work is hard, it's complex, and it requires some very able and capable commissioners to handle the work. So yes, we are concerned that we will be down to just 3 commissioners, and yes, the desire would be to try to find good people to serve in that capacity. But it's hard at this time in a towards the end of an administration as you're trying to get attention to nominees. Now, these would be commissioners that would extend beyond the term of this president. And so it's not something that you're just looking to fill a seat for 6, 7, 8 months. But it is something that we need to try to work to address, find those good commissioners.
Nate Grunwald. Okay. Nate Grunwald, Leading Publishing. Do you have any more specifics on the possible timing of the Senate Energy Bill, the Comprehensive Energy Bill that you spoke about just earlier? You have in mind when there might be a vote, or is it just kind of up in the air right now? And second question, if I may, there's been a lot of discussion about the economy in this conference. Some economists have mentioned that the possibility of maybe a infrastructure spending package might be something that could get things moving again. Is there any thinking at all among Congress or the Senate about some kind of legislation like that?
Well, I'll speak to the first part of your question, which is more precise timing. As was mentioned, members are still reviewing the proposal that has been laid down, and once we get agreement that that this package can proceed, we can move through it in very short order. And when I say very short order, the time to process 8 amendments, we could kick it out in an afternoon and be done. My hope would be that we would be able to get to it as soon as early this next week, but that really is dependent, again, upon colleagues' review, and if there are issues that need to be resolved, we're working to do that. I'm sitting here in Houston today, but that doesn't mean that my Cracker Jack team is not working very aggressively back in Washington as we speak.
And I'd add, also, you've been talking about coordinating already with Fred Upton and his committee in the House, so hopefully to expedite the work of a conference committee or the differences between the House and the Senate so we can get it to the President sooner.
And the second question,
Well, the
About
infrastructure.
the infrastructure, we just passed a multi-year highway bill to deal with that part of infrastructure, bridges and roads and highways and the like. I'm not aware of any proposals coming out of the Environment and Public Works Committee, which I guess is where that would emanate from in the near term. But clearly, it's a subject of interest, but I'm not aware of anything on the immediate horizon.
There are 2 things to add to what Senator Cornyn has just said. There is an effort to work on what we call the WRDA bill, the Water Resources Development Bill, and Senator Inhofe has been leading that. I think he would like to try to advance that. And the other thing that I would add, as part of the Flint proposal, Senator Inhofe back in 2014 had authorized through his committee what is known as the Water Infrastructure Financing Initiative Authority, WIFIA, and it is a loan construct where states could go to this WIFIA fund. It's like TIFIA, which is the transportation infrastructure, only it's for water infrastructure, as part of the Flint proposal that is up for members' consideration. There would be funding that would be directed into that infrastructure loan account to $70 million, which would leverage $700 million of loans available not just to Flint, but to all states for purposes of assisting with water infrastructure. So that's not new legislation, but it's something that we haven't put any funding behind.
I'd say we're all cognizant of the fact as well that we're operating in an environment with $19 trillion in debt, and looking at what the appropriate federal role is vis-a-vis the local ratepayers and the state role. And as I said, Governor Snyder, I believe, is coming to testify in front of Congress shortly about what the Michigan legislature has done and appropriate money they've appropriated to make sure that we don't somehow preempt what the local and state officials are doing and somehow make a federal issue every local issue. Having said that, we do recognize, as Senator Murkowski has said, there is an appropriate federal role, but we're trying to circumscribe that in a correct way.
Just a few more questions.
I'm just gonna add on that one because I can't undercut my own energy fund or my own energy bill. In the Energy Policy Modernization Act, one of the things that state of Alaska is looking at with interest is the ability for states to access federal loan programs that have previously just been available to private entity. For a state like us, that might be helpful. And so there are initiatives that can help facilitate certain types of infrastructure, but they're in the works still.
Jeffrey Weiss, Dallas Morning News. A number of the panels over the last week have included representatives from governments and private companies dealing with what sounded like an acknowledgement of the reality of the effect of fossil fuel emissions on climate and what the government agencies abroad and local industries in America were planning to do to respond to that. What is the appropriate federal role, if there is one, to encourage a particular kind of activity by private industry in America?
Well,
Good.
I'll take a stab at that. Obviously, it is part of the federal government's portfolio to deal with environmental issues from a public safety and quality of life point of view. Obviously, the whole climate issue has some controversy associated. From my part, it's not doubting or denying that human beings have an impact on the climate. I firmly believe we do. But the question is, what, if anything, is the appropriate response to deal with it? And given some of the science that I've read and understand, some of the proposals emanating from the administration are things that may make you feel better about it, but actually in terms of moving the dial in a global way, they have a negligible impact while causing a lot of expense and cost domestically without a lot of gain from a global perspective, recognizing that developing nations like China and India are not going to hamper their own economic growth by somehow agreeing to rules that would deny them access to low-cost energy, which will allow them to grow. So I think the biggest problem I've seen in this whole area is the administration has become so impatient and so frustrated that they've simply refused to try to build consensus within the United States and within Congress, and entered into political agreements like the Paris climate deal, which will not survive this president's term of office. As you know, a treaty, which would require 2/3 of Congress of Senate, to approve, would endure beyond the president's term. But because the president did not go that route, and indeed did not do the hard work of trying to build consensus before he went to Paris to see if there was consensus and could be subject to a vote on a treaty that would endure beyond his presidency, is left with a document which is a political document that won't survive his term of office, which ends in about 330 days or so.
But is there a federal role that encourages?
Well, let me speak to that, because I have been, some have said, you've got an energy bill that's out there on the floor right now. These issues as they relate to emissions and a cleaner environment, where's your climate title in your energy bill? To which I say, look at the entire energy bill. Because what we do with this is we work to promote efficiency. The more efficient that we are with any, regardless of what your energy source is, the more efficient we are, the less emissions you're going to see. We focus on infrastructure. As you are building out infrastructure that is newer, more modern, you don't have the issues that you would see with for instance, the leakage of methane, if that's something that you're focused on. Every time we work to update our technologies, we are benefiting our environment at the same time. So you're helping the economy, you're also helping the environment, but you're doing it without a mandate coming down on top of you. You're doing it because it makes good business sense. Now, to me, that seems to be the way we ought to go, because you don't want policies that are designed to simply drive up the price of one energy source so that the other one that you're trying to enhance looks a little bit better. That doesn't work. It doesn't work in my state. It doesn't work here in Texas. It doesn't work around the country. So we've got an energy bill that focuses on efficiency, supply, infrastructure, and accountability. All of that works to reduce your emissions and allow for a healthier and a cleaner place.
One last quick
Last question, please.
Hi. Hello? Hi, this is Nusheen Huck from Bloomberg BNA. Senator Murkowski, you had mentioned that you're also speaking with your colleagues on the House about the energy bill. Can you expand on that a little bit? What kind of sense are you getting from them? How closely to what the Senate is passing?
The House, as you know, has been working on its version of the energy bill. They moved it out of the House late last year. Chairman Upton has been one that I have been in constant communication with as we have been working on both sides of the Hill to really make sure that we know what they're doing and they know what we're doing. We're both committed to having a conference that will allow us to produce a bill that the President will sign into law. That's the goal here, is to change policy, not just to send a message saying that we can move something, but to change the policy, to update this. So not only working with Chairman Upton, but we have a conservation piece in here that relates to some of our public lands. So we've been talking with Chairman Bishop. So we've been working along the way so that when we move this out of the Senate, the House is not going to look up in surprise and say, where did that come from and what do we do with it? We know, we're prepared, and we're ready to go.